And we are live. You already know who it is. My name is Mike Kyle, aka the Fantasy Vulture. I have over a decade worth of fantasy football experience and have continuously competed for fantasy championships over the course of the past 6 seasons. Let's make it 7 in 2020. But enough of me. I'm here for you on today's episode of the FV Show. I'm giving away some of my best kept secret fantasy advice, how to guarantee your team to make the fantasy playoffs in 2020. These are 2 rules that I follow year in and year out, and it has consistently allowed me to finish as a playoff team. Now, do I always win the championship? No, but making the playoffs has been a consistent feature of my team for the past 6 seasons. And with that being said, let's jump right into it. But before we do that, I'm going to throw you a little curveball there. A few quick things from you. First off, smash that subscribe button, power running back style like Derrick Henry up the middle. Also hit that like button down below like an open receiver downfield, Patrick Mahomes style. And if you're listening to the podcast, be sure to drop us a review. Wherever you're listening, the numbers on the podcast are booming right now, and that makes my heart so happy. And last but not least, you can follow me on all social media platforms at FFVulture. That is TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. And of course, the website is ffvulture.com. Let's get right into it because we got a lot to cover today. I'm going to try and make this a little bit quick, but just stick with me because I really only have 2 tips for you. So the first one is know what your magic number is weekly. How many points per game do you need to score in order to make the playoffs? Luckily for you, I have that information. In standard leagues, the average points per game that the average fantasy playoff team scores, I know that's a little bit of a mouthful. So the average points per game that a playoff team scores is 94 points. And that dates back all the way from 2012 until now. So the better part of a decade, we've seen this year over year where the numbers really don't move. It hovered over that 93, moved up to 94, and maybe there was a year or two where it went up to 95 just because of the amount of fantasy points that were scored. But by and large, your number to hit week in and week out is 94 points per game. And that doesn't even sound like a high number because it truthfully isn't. And that's a good thing. Honestly, that is a really good thing because the expectation now isn't through the roof. It's not, oh shit, I have to score 110 to make the playoffs. No, you don't even have to do triple digits. You literally just have to get over 93 into 94 and you're there. Because that also factors in boom games where you do put up 120 and the bust games where you put up 70. And then that equals 90, and so you just need a little bit more than that. And so if you that is such an easy number to hit week in and week out. But one thing that you're probably wondering is, well, how do I get there, right? Luckily for you, I have the answer to that with 2 graphics. We're going to do standard and half point today for this exercise. So let's start off with the left-hand side, and this is an alternating draft strategy where you start off running back, wide receiver, running back, wide receiver. So in this strategy, you are going to wait on a quarterback, and you're going to take Matt Ryan in that 7th round or so. That's not obviously waiting, but that 7th, 8th round territory for Matt Ryan is pretty much right on line with ADP. One of the things that you'll be able to notice through this is that this is a realistic team. Every team that I constructed here is realistic based upon ADP and where you're drafting. So Matt Ryan can easily get you 20 points per game, and that's just because of the offense and the passing volume that he's in and the weapons that he has. So 20 points for Matt Ryan. Dalvin Cook, 15.3. That's easy money for Dalvin. He averaged more than that last season. Todd Gurley, you're going to stack. Todd Gurley's going to be your 2nd running back, and he's going to be your 3rd round draft pick. You're going to take Todd Gurley because you love the Atlanta offense. You love what Todd Gurley can do, getting in the end zone 14 times last season. 10.5 points per game for Todd Gurley should be easy money this year. Allen Robinson, you decide to take in the 2nd round because you value 150 targets, and Allen Robinson should be on a team that is able to move the ball just a little bit better this season compared to last. So 11.5 points for Allen Robinson should be very easy to come by, and Robinson should be a pretty good option as your number 1 wide receiver, especially just based upon target volume alone. Your number 2 wide receiver, who you're going to take in the 4th round, is Tyler Lockett because people value DK Metcalf more than Lockett, and Lockett's going to slide down your draft board just a little bit. Lockett, we know the connection that he has with Russell Wilson, and we've seen that grow and develop over the years. That's not going to slow down anytime soon. Tyler Lockett comes in with 9.8 points per game, just under 10, but that's still going to be very serviceable for your wide receiver too. Up next, Jared Cook, your tight end, you're going to wait until that 8th round range to take Cook. 7.8 points per game should be a no-brainer there. He plays on a great offense with a lot of touchdown potential. We saw what he did with the Saints last season, Andrew Brees. Your flex, Ronald Jones is going to slide down your draft board because Leonard Fournette's there and people don't know what to do with the situation. But we saw last season that even just on 40% of the snaps, Ronald Jones was very good for fantasy, finishing as running back 26. Ronald Jones getting 9 points should seem like a pretty firm, like that feels right. You're going to look at Ronald Jones and you're going to say 9 points for Ronald Jones week in and week out. Yeah, it seems pretty solid. I'll use him as my flex. And then your defense and your kicker are going to combine for just about 18 points. Now those two positions are a little bit unpredictable. Kicker not so much because you just use the kicker with a good offense because that's going to equate to more fantasy points. And for defenses, I really like the Rams defense this year. I know that they understand. I understand that they play in a very competitive division, but when you have Jalen Ramsey playing corner and you have Aaron Donald on the front line, that gives you the opportunity for interceptions, pick sixes, strip fumbles, and sacks. I'm all in for it. For the Rams this season. And those two numbers that you see right there, the 9.4 and the 8.7, were the averages for top 10 defenses and top 10 kickers. So, now let's go over to the next draft strategy, and that's going to be looking at the right-hand side. You're still going to wait on a quarterback. You're going to wait even longer for Aaron Rodgers because you believe, I don't, but you may believe that Aaron Rodgers is out on a mission to prove it this season that he still has it. Aaron Rodgers is going to get you 17.5 points per game. Again, that's fine, no big deal because the quarterback position is so deep. However, you're going to start off your draft. We're going to go down to the wide receiver just a little bit. You're going to start off your draft with Michael Thomas because you got that 7th pick. The tier 1 of running backs went off the board, and so you decided to take a wide receiver in the first round of a standard league. Michael Thomas averaged 14.1 points per game in standard formats last season. But then in your second round, you're going to take Austin Eckler because he's one of the last running backs there. He's going to give you 13.6 points. And then you decide in that third round, you know what, you want to go for that swing at wide receiver once again. And you take A.J. Brown of the Tennessee Titans, 10.8 points per game last year, and he balled out with Ryan Tannehill towards the second half of the season. However, you still need a running back to fill that number 2 slot. And Le'Veon Bell is there for you in the 4th round. Yes, there's a lot of negative news surrounding Bell and the Jets right now, but all is fine because he's still going to get the ball 230 times this season, and Le'Veon Bell is going to contribute damn near 10 points per game for you, which is fine as a running back too. It's not great, but in a standard and you're grabbing him in the 4th round, it'll do. And then at tight end, you're going to take Tyler Higbee. You're going to reach just a little bit to secure that tight end position. A guy with a whole lot of upside in that Rams offense. 6.1 points per game from Higbee last season. And that'll do. That number should be up for this season. Your flex. You know what? I've talked about this time and time again, where you're deciding between A.J. Green and Tyler Boyd. Their ADPs right around the same. But you get sniped. A.J. Green goes a pick before you, so you settle for Tyler Boyd, who averaged 8.3 points per game last season. And then your defense, you're going to take the Vikings defense because that division can be a little bit wonky, and you're going to take Matt Prater of the Detroit Lions because the Lions, with Stafford back and healthy, should be able to put up fantasy points this season. And your total there comes out to 97.5. And then let's move back to half-point PPR, because we haven't talked about that so far. We only talked about standard. So, before we do that, I want to jump to full-point PPR, which I don't have any graphics for, because honestly, full-point PPR kind of drives me up a wall. More on that for another day, though. So, it's 94 points per game in standard, the average playoff team. However, in a full-point PPR, that number is 122. Now, I did my projections for how much it would take for how much it would take your team to score to make the playoffs in half point, and my number was very different than the number that the average between the two were. My number, I believe, was 104. No, my number was 105, and the reason why I did that was because I gave your number 1 wide receiver would get 3 additional points for 6 receptions. Your number 2 wide receiver would get 2 points for 4 additional receptions. Your flex, depending on who you start there, would be anywhere between 3 and 4 receptions. So I just went with 3, so we'll go with 1.5. Your number 1 running back would have 4 receptions, so there's another 2 points. Your number 2 running back would have 2 receptions, so there's another point. And then 2 points for your tight end, who would see probably 4 receptions or so. So that's why I got 105. But then I decided, you know what, I really don't want to run that risk of being wrong because my projections were wrong, even though I feel like I have a pretty good grasp of how much receptions should contribute to your fantasy team. Just because if you look down the numbers, 6 receptions. I don't have my calculator. God bless America. I think it was like 6 receptions for 16 games comes out to like 90 catches or so, and that's right around where your wide receiver 1 is going to be. Your wide receiver 2 is going to see right around, I think 4 receptions, 16. Right around, that's like 70 catches or so. I think it's like 65, and that feels right for your number 2 option. But regardless, what I ultimately decided to do was just do typical math. Take the full point PPR and the standard, add them up, divide them by 2. So the points per game that you need to score in a half point to make the playoffs on average is 108. So let's jump right into the graphics here for half point PPR. So I have 2 totally different strategies for this segment of this playoff episode. 108 with a 0 wide receiver strategy, and this is what this looks like. And by 0 wide receiver, I mean like a hybrid version. Like you're going to start off your draft running back, and then for 0 RB, you're going to start off your draft wide receiver. But regardless, nuances aside here. So with zero wide receiver, you're going to start off with Alvin Kamara of the New Orleans Saints in the first round. He averaged just a shade under 15 points per game last season. And then you're going to follow that up off of the second round with Aaron Jones, who averaged 18.1 points per game last year. Now, that number will likely decline, but still that number is going to be well above that 12 point per game mark. But now you need a wide receiver. So what do you decide to do? You actually decide to wait an additional round. And you're going to take Mark Andrews in the third round at the tight end position. Mark Andrews balled out last year. They got rid of Hayden Hurst this offseason. Mark Andrews is going to be on the field significantly more because he was only on the field like 65% of the time last season. So Mark Andrews is going to contribute for you massively, and he's going to give you 11.7 points per game. But now time has come where you need a wide receiver. So who do you decide to take? You decide to take Terry McLaurin, the F1, 11.6 points per game. And now it's time for a quarterback because the early run of quarterbacks is starting. And you're going to take Kyler Murray, who is expected to have a breakout season this year with the Arizona Cardinals. And Murray last season, really kind of a down year too, like compared to what the expectation was. 18.5 points per game from him. But you still need that number 2 receiving option, so you're going to take DJ Chark of the Jacksonville Jaguars, who put up 12.6 points per game last season. Your flex, Deebo Samuel, was just activated off of the injured list, so you'll take him and grab up that late round value because he would normally be a 5th or 4th round pick this season. So Deebo Samuel comes in as your number 3 option at the receiver position, and he's going to give you 10.7 points per game. Again, with your defense and kicker, it's going to be 17 points from those 2. I went with the Chiefs and Zane Gonzalez. These really don't matter because you're likely going to be streaming if you don't grab a top option, but you get the point regardless. You can see how the math works out. And your total for 0 wide receiver is going to be 115.1, 7 points higher than that 108 mark that you need to hit. And up next, on the right-hand side, 0 running back. So we're going to take the opposite approach here and see what happens, especially in a half-point PPR, where you're going to see this strategy used a lot more frequently. So you got that 8th pick or so. We'll say that. We'll say 8th pick. And you decide to take Julio Jones, who's just still sitting there on the board, being disrespected continuously year over year, it feels like. It feels like Julio Jones's ADP has gone like this for some unknown reason because he is still great for fantasy purposes. Julio Jones, tried and true, the reception machine, the yardage master. 15 points from him week in and week out. Then, because you have that consistent fantasy option as your wide receiver 1, you're going to get a little dicey, and you're going to swing for the fences with Amari Cooper, a player who I have not been high on, but you're going to take him regardless because you disagree with my opinion. Amari Cooper averaged 12.9 points per game last season. Another year in the Cowboys offense, another year of Dak Prescott in a contract year. Cooper should be in for a big season, hopefully with some more consistency this season. But that third round, you need a running back. So who do you decide to take? You're going to take James Conner, a guy that you believe is going to have a bounce back season if he stays healthy. When he's been on the field, he has been great for fantasy purposes. James Conner is also come in with 12.9 points per game. But you really need that flex option, and you like what Devontae Parker did last season with the Dolphins. Ryan Fitzpatrick may start, may not, but if Tua comes in, doesn't really matter. Was last year the breakout season for Devontae Parker. So you're going to take Devontae Parker in the 4th round, and he, like I said, balled out last season. Balled out with the Dolphins. Finally, the breakout came, and he put up 13.1 points per game. He actually scored more points per game than both Amari Cooper and James Conner. You need to fill that second running back slot, and you're going to take David Montgomery, whose ADP continues to fall just because of the groin injury, but it looks like he should be good to go for Week 1. Montgomery, a little bit of a letdown rookie season, only averaged 9.9 points per game, but even if he just hits that, you're still going to be fine as your running back too, especially because of the receiving options that you have on your team. It's time for a tight end. You're going to take Evan Ingram of the New York Giants, who again, like James Conner, when he's been on the field, he has been spectacular, but unfortunately there are some injury concerns. Evan Ingram, just an absolute freak athlete, extremely talented tight end, and his ADP just felt too good to pass up, who averaged 10.9 points per game last season. And now, after you filled out your bench and some of the guys there, now is the time to take your quarterback, Matt Stafford, who I talked about earlier with Matt Prater, a guy who has a lot of weapons, who's going to air it out, throw for over 4,000 yards, and probably 25 to 32 touchdowns in that range. 30 touchdowns is way more likely. He also averaged 21.4 points per game last season, and he was on pace for a monster year before the injury. Defense and kicker, once again, we're going to go with the Saints and Dan Bailey. Again, they combined for 16 points. And your total for that starting lineup is going to be 112.8. So, that's it. That's literally all it takes. I just gave you the blueprint for four different strategies, and it's not even format dependent, but it just shows you how easy it is to, once you know the number, you're able to kind of start mapping out what you need from each position, where the draft value is that you can get that from, and really just start forming your team to hit that number week in and week out. This is a strategy that I've used before. It works well, but the big thing for me really is just knowing that number week in and week out. I mean, last season I went 11-2, and I averaged over, I want to say I averaged 108, and that blew out everybody. I was the number 1 seed, obviously, with an 11-2 record, but I don't think anybody was even close to me in that regard, so that was an outlier of a season in a way. But even just going through some of the other teams, I think some of the other numbers that I saw last season when I was really just mapping it out was I saw a whole lot of 90s. There was maybe a 95, and that person finished with a 10-win season as well. So I know that this number works, whether it's in standard or full point or half point. We have the data, and we have to utilize that to the best of our abilities. But we aren't done yet. That's just one of 2 tips. The next tip, and this is going to take some graphic design. Yes, we're going to jump over to Photoshop here, and that is going to be how to guarantee your team to make the play. Oh no. And that's going to be how to guarantee your team to make the playoffs. There we go. With just 9 wins, because that is the number that you need to hit. Let me get set up here. Alrighty. So, 9 wins, 9-4 will nearly guarantee your team to make the playoffs. I'm going to move my mic just a little bit over here. I'm going to move my mouse as well. All right. So we need to break down the tiers of fantasy records. So you have 14 different records that you can go during any given fantasy season. There's 13-0, there's 12-1, 11-2, 10-3, 9-4, 8-5, 7-6, 6-7, 5-8, 4-9, 3-10, 2-11, 1-12, and 0-13. I'm gonna change my colors here because we're going to get to drawing, all right? So here's what we need to realize, and I'm going to just use a 10-team team. I'm going to use a 10-team league for this, but honestly, this works if you're able to pace it out to a 12 and 14 team league. It works just the same. So let me explain. But we're going to use 10 just because that's a very simple number to break things down into. So here's what we need to know. Where's my layer at? Thank you. Oh, wait, why is that hidden? There we go. Let's throw these up. So let's kind of break these down into tiers first. So 13 and 0, 12 and 1, 11 and 2, that's your rock star tier. And this is going to be the tier where you pretty much lock up the number 1 seed with these records. It's going to be very, very hard for 2 teams to finish there. 13 and 0 is nearly impossible, and we'll touch on that in just a little bit. But just know that if you finish in this area, in this circle, you are balling out this season. 9 and 4 and 10 and 3, that's a great year. There's not a whole lot to be said there. You finished well over 500, and you put yourself in a great position to make the playoffs. 8 and 5 is just kind of on an island. You're above 500, but you're a tier below greatness. So 8 and 5 is just really good, a super solid season. 7 and 6 and 6 and 7. I always find that these two, there's always multiple teams in them in this circle, and so we're actually going to call this the fringe. That didn't work. There we go. So we're going to call this the fringe because I consistently see teams almost make the playoffs or even occasionally make the playoffs in this range, especially in a 10-team league, just because everybody's throwing jabs at each other constantly throughout the season, where you are going to lose a handful of games and you are going to win a handful of games as well on the other hand of things. But consistently what I tend to see is a team misses the playoff by 1 game because they were 7 and 6, and that 6 and 7 team was on the outside looking in, but they were in the hunt down the stretch. Your mess season is 5 and 8 and 4 and 9. Maybe you had a chance if things broke right down the stretch, but unfortunately they didn't. Maybe you started off poorly and you had to try and recover. And then the bad season is obviously having 3 wins or less. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to X out the bad. Because if you finish here, there's no way in hell that you're going to make the playoffs. And in a 10-team league, probably 1 team is going to finish in this range. So let's do that. All right. And then moving forward to that 5 and 9, again, you're not going to make the playoffs with a record like this unless you play in some format that rewards scoring. Like my dynasty team, like last year, I went 4 and 9, but I still made the playoffs because I was one of the league leaders in points. # reward scoring. I advise all leagues to do something similar. And we know that there's going to be probably 2 teams that finish in this area, all things considered. Just because, again, you are throwing jabs with your league mates left, right, and center week in and week out. It's basically just a roulette of who gets beat up this week, right? Your fringe. Again, I've seen this time and time again, where you have teams just vying for playoff spots, but they're right on the fringe and they aren't quite good enough. And this is where the majority of the league is going to lie. So I actually mapped out 3 teams are likely to finish in this area. And then we go to 8 and yeah. So we're actually going to X out these as well because they are on the fringe and they are typically on the outside looking in. So now we're going to switch colors just a little bit. And this 8 and 5, actually, before we do that, one thing that I want to do before we even touch on before we even touch on blue, I'm going to cross out 13 and 0. And the reason why is because it is almost impossible to go undefeated in fantasy in a regular season, let alone a full season. I thought I had the chance to do it, going 11 and 2, but I got the brakes beaten off of me on a stupid week where half of my opponent had half of his players on a bye and he was starting garbage and my team just let down. And then I also lost, I think, just in a absolute barn burner where we both put up 140 points in a given week. So 13 and 0 is almost impossible, so we're actually going to cross that out right there. But going back to 8 and 5, there's going to be likely another fringe team here. Will they make the playoffs? Will they not? Depends on what happens with the rest of the league. And we're going to throw a 1 here. There's always going to be one juggernaut team, a team that runs through the house and the rest of the league, and they are going to be in this Rockstar category. So we're going to throw them here, and we're going to go like this. There we go. And then last but not least, your 10-3 and your 9-4 team. There's probably going to be 2 double-digit win teams in your league, but that double-digit win is going to come at 10. It's very, very unlikely that you'll have 2 teams going 11-2, one team going 12-1, one team going 11-2, or just that 13-0 and 11-2 split. It's just very, very unlikely. But that 10 win is really like the cutoff for that. So we're gonna say that a team's going to finish 10-3, but then another team is going to finish 9-4. All right, so looking at this right now, the team that makes the playoffs are going to have, let's see, you're going to have a Rockstar team, you're going to have a good team, and then you're going to have 2 great teams that make the playoffs. But we aren't done yet, because here's the important thing to note. Okay, I want to switch colors here. Let's pull up green. That works. It's important to note this giant section. There we go. This giant section is going to be the makeup of nearly 80% of your league. You're going to have your juggernaut here in this Rockstar category, and you're going to have the team that everybody makes fun of because of just how bad it is here at the bottom of the well. So we're going to eliminate 20% of the team, and 80% is going to finish in between 4-9 and 10-3. And this is the point that I really need to emphasize. You don't have to be perfect. No one's asking you to go 13-0, 11-2, or 12-1 to make the playoffs. But this is why I say 9-4. How many teams here are in the meh category and the fine category every single year? Well, that's 5. There's 5 teams there, and that is half of your league. So half of your league alone is not going to make the playoffs based off of this circle. Additionally, we also have the outside looking in the bad category, so there's 6. The reason why we have the question mark around that 8-5 is just because I've always noticed that that's the spot where things can get a little bit difficult. Maybe you are on the fringe even at 8-5, but at 8-5 you're still a cut above 7-6 or 6-7. And so being 9-4, that's going to give you your edge. Not only at 9-4, you're not only going to get your edge against this group here in the fine category, but you're also going to get that 1 game advantage over the good team as well. Just that 1 game makes so much of a difference. And again, you don't have to be perfect when you go 9-4. That's going to leave you so much wiggle room in order for you to be okay with a loss or 2 or 3 or 4, because we play 13 weeks. So one more time, just to reiterate this again in full. You're going to have 1 team, your Rockstar team of the league. There's one every single year that's just blowing through the rest of the league. However, on the other side, you're going to have 1 bad team as well. And so those 2 teams kind of cancel out. Your meh and fine, that's 7-6, 6-7, 5-8, 4-9. That's where the majority of your leagues are going. That's where the majority of your opponents are going to finish. And the reason why is just because in a fantasy football league, the name of the game is just trading blow after blow, week in and week out. 1 week you'll ball out, the next week you'll let down, and it really is just a matter of trying to find some level of consistency in this game. So I assess that you'll probably have about 5 teams finishing in that set of records. And then we look over at the good team, and that's 8-5. They're a cut above the rest as far as fine and meh, but they still aren't great. They're just a super solid team overall with an 8-5 record. And they're likely to make the playoffs, but it's not a guarantee. But the big story here is, once again, I want to go yellow here. Let me pull, where's my yellow marker? There we go. The story again is 9-4. And the reason why is because you don't have to be perfect with the Rockstar tier. You're above fine and meh, and you are once again a cut above good. I love this. This to me has helped me so much because I understand that not every week is going to be winnable. There are games where you are going to get absolutely buzzsawed, and you have to be okay with that. And being able to take 4 losses in a 13-week span makes things so much easier. One of the ways, and actually I can demonstrate this now. We're going to do this. I'm going to jump back to Photoshop real quick. There we go. I'm going to jump back to Photoshop real quick, and what I want to do is I am going to erase. Let me change this up. So I'm going to erase this, and I'm just going to work on this top line. Let's go back to blue. All right, so this line is the regular season. We're going to go week 1. We're going to go week 5. We are going to go week 9. And then we're going to go week 13. I'm going to change my color back to red and really illustrate this point. So, I break these down into chunks. And I've heard other analysts say this as well, but it really does help. Because when you're looking at your fantasy schedule, you can probably tell when you're going to lose. Whether that is based off of because you have your 2-star players having the same bye week, or you're just facing an absolute juggernaut a different week. So what we can do is we can look at this and say, all right, so I know week 2, I'm going against that juggernaut. That's going to be a loss. I know for a fact I'm probably going to lose week 2. All right, so then if we go for the first 4 weeks, if we go 3-1, we're on pace for 9-4. But then let's talk about weeks 5 through 9. All right, well, looking at week 8, I know both my quarterback and my star wide receiver, Michael Thomas, have their bye week 8. So we're going to lose week 8 as well. And then, going down the stretch even further, I know that my cousin needs a win to make the playoffs, and I think he's going to make a monster trade before the trade deadline. So week 11, I think he pulls the trigger, and he's going to bring in Aaron Jones to his team that was already stacked at the running back position, and now he adds another guy to that piece. So week 11, I might lose that as well. But when you look at it, and just in these 3 segments, you are literally going 10-3. If you win everything else, and even further, you have the ability to lose another game because you just have these 3 losses. So somewhere along the way, maybe you mess up week 10, and maybe you mess up week 10, and as your kicker is lining up to kick a field goal and the ball is snapped, he kicks and he tears his ACL. Unfortunate, and you got a 0 for that player on the week because he obviously left the game because he's not going to kick with a torn ACL. #ban kickers. But regardless, you can see how this can play a factor, and really just being able to hang on to that extra win, or that extra loss, should I say, just keep it in your back pocket. Like, if you need to tank a week, or whatever the case, you know you can live with that. But really being able to see this in multiple ways, like in multiple segments. Like I said, week 1 through 4 is one segment. Week 5 through 9 is another. And then weeks 9 through 13 is a third. And you're being able to just find your ways to either maintain the steady course, take a loss if need be, or know where your losses can come from. And this to me is such a powerful tool. It's one that I use frequently, and it's the reason why I think I've been so successful at making the playoffs over the course of the past 6 or 7 years. Because I understand not only where my numbers are that I need to hit weekly. I know I need to hit 94 or 108 points per game, but I also know the record that I need in order to make the playoffs. Because at 9-4 again, I don't have to be perfect. I'm a cut above 8-7, and I blow out everybody else by at least 2 games. And again, I have room for error. I have room for error going 9-4. One thing I want to tidbit though that I want to point out. This isn't, again, just for 10-team leagues or anything. Like, yes, I play in 10, but it's not just for that. Last season, I played in a 14-team league, the biggest league size that I've ever played in. I went 9-4, and I made the playoffs, and I won the damn thing. So I know for a fact that this isn't just a small league thing. This is a This is a big league thing too, because there is a major difference between 14 teams and 10. But damn it, we made it work. We went 9-4, and then we went on to win the championship. And then another note, just to prove this point even further, I went back last season and I looked at the top 4 teams of my Dynasty League to see what their records are. And lo and behold, the average was 9 wins. The number one seed went 11-2. The number 2 seed went 9-4. The number 3 seed went 8-5, and the number 4 seed also went 8-5. So, there it is. There it is. The average number and the average record for that team, for that playoff team in my Dynasty League was 9-4. I just gave you the blueprint. I promise you this works. This has worked for me year over year since 2016. And here we are. Here we are. You can see my baby's behind me because of these things. Look, what you do with this is up to you. But hopefully this helps you see things a little bit more clearly and a little bit differently than you did just 36 minutes ago. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. We're trying to do this thing almost every single day. The NFL season is literally... When am I posting this? Am I posting this Monday? I think I'm posting this Monday. Maybe I'll post this today. What do I want to do? Yeah, we'll post this tomorrow. We'll post this tomorrow. So the NFL season is literally in just a few short days away. I'm going to try and take the early part of next week off, so I'll probably be off Tuesday and Wednesday. We'll be back Thursday for a Thursday night football preview. Chiefs and Texans, let's fucking go. It's finally here. Fantasy football season is in full effect, and I could not be more excited. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button down below, hit that like button down below, subscribe to the podcast, leave a review on the podcast, and follow me on all social media platforms at FFVulture, and of course the website is ffvulture.com. Remember, people come and go, but fantasy championships are forever. I'll see you in the next episode. Later.